welcome to Pet Pals. And on today's program, we're going to be featuring cats from Catnap from the Heart, located right here in LaGrange Park. And my guest is Don Hill, who's a volunteer at the shelter. Don, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having us and letting us tell our story.
Yeah, so we're going to hear about your story now. And so why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about Catnap, how it was organized, and some of the services that they offer.
Sure. We started 15 years ago, and our founder, Bobby Myers, started out as a boarding facility for cats. And we had so much from the community saying, can you help us with these cats? And we need the cats to find a home. So what we did about 15 years ago was turn into a 501c3. That's the kind of charity that you designate for the government so you can donate money and all that kind of stuff. So what we started doing is really working with the community and coming up with the idea of taking in these cats and really matching them to a home and spending a lot of time and having conversations with people coming in to adopt and then fitting these cats to the right home environment.
And where do the cats come from?
Yeah, we talked about it early, and where they basically come from is we started out mainly owner surrender, where people have problems economically, they can't keep the cat, they're moving somewhere, and so they bring the cat in, and we find out as much as we can, because then we can easily match them to another home.
Right.
We also take in surrenders from other shelters, because we're all in this biz together, and we're all no-kill shelters, which means we don't euthanize a cat to make room for another cat or dog or whatever. So we take in when we have space to do it. And the reason we work so carefully and really want to get all these cats adopted, because we want them in a home. But if we have to turn down a cat, that means another shelter has to turn down a cat, and it means we're contributing to the problem. So we're all going to work together on this.
Right. So earlier you talked about the adoption process a little bit. So can you go over that again for our viewers on what that is like and what that entails?
Absolutely. People come in and they fill out a real short little form, and basically we have a conversation with somebody. And we find out about the other pets in their household, what their household is like. I think I mentioned an early one. Is your house like a carnival or like a library? Do you expect a cat to be around and be a companion, or do you expect a lap cat? I have two cats who really hang around too much. No, they're great. They're lap cats. And then once we find out the right home, if we're sending a cat home in general, what we do is we send the cat home and we advise that take a small second bedroom or second bathroom or whatever and let the cat have their own space. Put the litter box in there and the food, and let them get used to the whole environment, and then gradually get them in there, because they're very territorial, and if you overwhelm them, they go nuts. But if there's other cats, what you do is the exact same thing, and then what you do is you gradually introduce the cats to the safe room, put food on either side of the door, slowly introduce them, and if there's dogs involved, put the dog on a leash, let the cat out, and do a slow process. And it doesn't take that long, and it ensures a better chance of a success.
Sure. And he also talked about, or we talked about earlier, about the new philosophy about open adoption. And tell me a little bit how that would work.
Sure. It really is about not asking a lot of questions and having an adoption form longer than applying for your mortgage. And what it involves is the concept of a conversation and talking with people to find out what the environment's like. Rather than asking questions and this, that, and that, you end up being like an adoption cop is what they're called. So it's an interesting concept, and people, the old-fashioned shelters, think that it's lowering standards, but statistics say you get better adoptions by doing it that way.
That sounds great. It sounds like an easier process.
Yeah, it's just harder to train adoption counselors because you're having a conversation. But it's great.
So now at Catnap right now, how many cats do you have there that are available to be adopted?
Yeah, I checked when I went back. We're at about 55, but we're going to be up close to 70 very shortly because kitten season. So
right.
a lot of kittens, and then mama gets spayed and neutered, but then we have all these kittens. So,
so speaking of spay and neutering, tell me about why that's so important.
Absolutely. We talked about the population problem and all those cats in Soldier Field, which is quite an interesting idea. The interesting thing about spaying and neutering is we have a huge population problem. And the idea behind it is simply really getting the population down, and actually health-wise spaying and neutering a cat actually makes them healthier. And with females, lower incidences, ovarian cancer, all that kind of cool stuff. With feral cats, it's very interesting. And the difference between a stray and a feral is a stray cat is a cat that's just been abandoned, dumped out the door, or has escaped. But you can tell after a while that they've been in a home. A feral cat has been born in the wild, generally afraid of humans, and sometimes a feral cat will just come up to a human. But what the idea is, what we need to do with them is called trap, neuter, and return. So we humanely trap them, spay and neuter them, and give them vaccinations and a health check, and then bring them back to their same environment. It's population control. The new way of doing it, which is really cool, we work with the community and help the caregiver bring them back to that environment. And there's shelter, so in the winter there's heated place for them, food and water, and sometimes condos are great. They team up and they almost sponsor feral cat colonies and take care of them. It's really good stuff.
That's great. So now all the cats that are at the shelter right now are on your website, correct? So if somebody wanted to look at the variety of cats that are available, then they could log on to
catnapfromtheheart.org.
Okay. And then when they land on that page, what do they click on in order to see the animals?
There's a landing page and there's a place for adoptable cats. And then what they do is we link them to something called Pet Finder, where we have all of our cats there. And if they'll be able to find the exact match that they want. But if they can't, they can go and look on Pet Finder and look for other places.
That's great. Okay, so then the cats, when they're ready for adoption, have their shots. What else? What else would the prospective adopting person expect that the cat is ready to go with?
Their shots, their basic vaccinations, and certified that they're healthy cats. And sometimes we have a cat that needs something like an antihistamine or something like that, and all of those records are there. And if we have a cat that are special needs, they know that. And we do have some very, very special project cats that we have, for instance, a diabetic cat that would need insulin. And there are people who, just lovely, wonderful people who really take on project cats, and that's just their passion.
That's great. And we're going to talk more about those cats. And we have a cat up for adoption on the show during our next segment, and her name is
Minuet.
Minuet. So stay tuned for Minuet coming up next, right after these messages. Welcome back to Pet Pals. We are featuring cats from Catnap from the Heart in LaGrange Park. And our guest on today's show is Don Hill, a volunteer at Catnap. And in this segment, we have Minuet. And Minuet is available for adoption. And by calling the number on your screen right now, 708-352-3914, you can call and make arrangements to see Minuet and hopefully adopt Minuet because she's a really terrific cat. So tell us a little bit about the backstory on this cat and how she ended up in your shelter.
Absolutely. So Minuet is about 2 years old, and she came in to our shelter very pregnant, and she had her kittens, and it was kind of interesting because her original name was Fishy. And was pretty simple because, believe it or not, they had a hard time getting her in the carrier.
Oh, okay.
So what they did to get her in there, they put in 2 cans of tuna fish, and she dumped it all over herself.
Oh,
But then she responded well to the name. She can do that.
You can get a shot of her.
Yeah.
So they can see her.
You're the cat whisperer. You can. you just want to hold her leash, she'll probably do that. So yeah, we finally figured out that she only responded to fishy, but we thought Minuet just fits much better.
Yeah, okay, very nice. Okay, so how old is Minuet now?
So Minuet is 2 years. She'll be 2 years old in about a week.
Okay.
And yeah, she had, I believe, a small litter, three kittens, and they're all adopted out in homes. So now it's her turn.
Yes. And so, what kind of food would Minuet be eating these days?
Sure. Minuet, all of our cats have a basic diet of the Iams dry food, which is good stuff, and we do, depending on the cat's diet, we do some supplements of wet food. What we would suggest for Minuet is it's perfectly cool to put dry food out. She can graze. If you have an overweight cat, you put dry food out, whatever.
Right.
We do suggest, though, once or twice a day, a supplement of wet food, and it doesn't have to be the really expensive stuff.
Right.
I kind of like the stuff that doesn't have grain in it, because grain does nothing for a cat.
Sure.
So.
And does Minuet get along with the cats? I don't know if I asked you that yet or not.
Absolutely. She gets along with other cats, and she gets along with kids really well.
Okay, good. And so if anybody wants to adopt Minuet, she is available right now by calling 708-352-3914.
And catnapfromtheheart.org. I've got that straight.
Right. And now tell me about, we talked about earlier the transition into homes. So after you adopt an animal from the shelter, what could the new owner expect as far as follow-up is concerned from the shelter?
Oh, absolutely. We take a term from the business world called onboarding, just like you would employ. So what we do is we follow up at a 2-day, a 4-day interval, and basically we follow up at the checkpoints of putting the cat in the safe room and seeing, do you want to transition out? And it isn't a very complicated process. It just makes it easier. And she came in very shy, and we worked with her, and you mentioned treats earlier. It's called treat therapy. So the idea of putting it about an inch away from her, and she huddled in the back of the cage. Now, she comes out to the front of the cage, which is good, because it's hard to adopt a cat when they huddle in the back of the cage.
Right. Oh, sure. Yeah. Now, do you go out into the community and do adoption at different locations, or do people can only see the animals at Catnap?
Actually, tomorrow we're going to be at Pet People in I think it's Western Springs, and we're going to be at the PetSmart in Broadview.
Okay.
And what we do is we can only bring a few cats, but we also talk about all of our cats that are sitting back there. And it's a very short drive from Broadview to LaGrange Park. So a lot of cases, we have people that are interested, and then we show the other cats, maybe on my tablet or whatever, and then they can go back.
Sure. Great. Well, this cat is really nice now that she's we have a lot of lights here, and so we're never quite sure how the cats are going to react, but Minuet seems to be doing very, very well on the show today. So I want to thank you for bringing Minuet on this segment. And again, the number is 708-352-3914, and call that number during regular business hours, right? Or can they leave a message if they're interested in the cat?
They can leave a message. The best way, though, is go right on the website, and there's some instructions on what to do and all that kind of cool stuff.
And can they go online and actually fill out the adoption forms, or is that something that has to happen in person?
I'm going to make that happen. We're working on that. Even to the point of like making a restaurant reservation to go and make sure there's somebody there. Anybody can walk in any time, but we can actually have an adoption console ready.
Sure, great. Okay, thank you very much. And we'll be right back with another cat from Catnap from the Heart right after these messages. Welcome back to Pet Pals, and we have Olive with us on this segment. We're featuring cats from Catnap from the Heart in LaGrange Park, and our guest on today's show is Don Hill, who's a volunteer, And Don, we didn't really talk about you very much on this show. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you do for the shelter,
Sure.
and maybe some special projects you're involved with.
Sure. I first started with catnap when I adopted my two cats, Matt and Maggie, two black cats, and my wife and I never had kids, but our goddaughter, her father is totally allergic to all animals.
Oh, okay.
I think he's allergic to tropical fish, I don't know. But, so she came over one time and said, Uncle Don, we should adopt a cat.
Yeah.
So we went over to catnap, and we did the whole thing, and I'm a business person, and I'm a management consultant. I said, well, I'll help you with your board and all that stuff. Fell in love with cats, so I've been to just tons of workshops, and I want to be a cat psychiatrist when I sell my businesses off and retire in 5 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So you got a plan.
I've got a plan. It's my passion.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so this is Olive. Tell me about Olive and maybe the story behind how the shelter got her.
You got it. Olive was brought in, well, it's hard to say very pregnant, but very pregnant because she had 7 kittens.
Wow,
So she had
that's
a
a lot
big
of
litter.
kittens. Wow.
And funny, two of the litters were, 2 of the kittens were a Siamese mix. Wow. 2 of the kittens were a brown tabby, kind of looked like her. 1 was a gray cat.
Wow.
I think 1 was a tuxedo. So the interesting story is that it's because of they kind of ovulate like rabbits, actually. And so the idea behind it is not uncommon for a litter to have several different fathers.
Right.
And what I was on an earlier show, I said they had different mothers, and everybody let no, it's different fathers, right?
Okay, all right.
So, and she's just really good, and she's very vocal, and all of the 7 kittens have been adopted.
Wow.
And she's a year, 10 months old, so she's almost 2 years old, and now it's her turn.
Yes, it is. And I forgot, how old is Olive?
She is 1 year, 10 months. So
Okay.
in people years, that's about 23.
Yeah, let's talk about people years for a second.
Sure.
How does that? How do they come up with that scale? for
Well,
people
it's
years?
people think about dogs and it's 1 year for 7. Well, it works for cats where when a cat is about 6 months old, they're equivalent to a 10-year-old. When they're
Okay.
8 months old, 13. And a year-old cat is equivalent to about a 15-year-old.
Wow.
And when a cat is 2 years old, they're equivalent to a 24-year-old. And then after that, just add 4 years for every year.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
And it's interesting because how cats mature. Cats are physically mature at about 2 to 2.5. I'm sorry, about a year to a year and a half old.
Okay.
They're physically mature. They're emotionally mature at about 2 years or 2.5.
Right.
So the reason that's important, everyone goes, well, so what? Is that when you see a cat who's 2 years old, that's pretty much the personality you're going to see.
Really? Wow.
And unlike humans, I was not mature when I was 24. I'm going to be 60 next week, and I'm not mature at 60, but yeah.
So, what are the adoption fees? When somebody is going to adopt a regular old cat from your shelter, what is the cost of that?
Sure. And the reason I say it kind of varies, but right now it's $125. But what we're doing because of open adoptions and a lot of other different events, there's some studies that show that if you waive the adoption fee, you'll actually get more in a donation.
Oh.
And we have special events where we'll adopt the cat and the cat will be down from a number and the older cat, all that kind of thing.
Right.
So it varies, and the idea is to really just get the cat in the right family, but to be able to, not use a bad term, but inventory term, because it's incredibly expensive just to keep a cat in a shelter for one day.
Right. So speaking of expenses, how does catnap generate the financial support for the organization?
Great question. It's mainly that we're a 501c3, which means that we're allowed to take in donations, and if you do a donation, you can deduct it off your income tax. So, so that is the major way we get funds in. We also get funds from adopting cats, but if that was our true business, that isn't a way to make a lot of money because it costs a lot to keep a cat.
Right.
Also, we do special events, and the other thing that we're working on is because there's so many homeless cats out there. We talked about in a year from now, we've had somebody going to vet school. She started out volunteering at 12 years old as a junior volunteer. She's graduating from vet school next year from I think the U of I hope I got it right. But the idea is we want to, for the community, have a spay-neuter clinic to help these outside rescues with feral cats and stray cats.
Right.
And to have community days and give vaccinations and health checks and basically people who are having low funds and having a hard time with things, even if it's temporarily, to make sure the cat gets some kind of veterinary care.
Right. I'm covered in hair right now.
Yes, you will be.
He's
and again, that's really normal because when they get stressed, that's what they do. And we brushed her before I left. So.
Yeah, well, there's the lights and everything. It's really, it's
yeah.
very stressful for the cat. All right, well, I want to thank you for bringing the cats on today.
Oh, you're welcome.
And it's been really a lot and visiting with the cats and visiting with you. And we look forward to seeing you again and coming back and and bringing cats in that need homes. And that's the main mission here is let's get these cats adopted. And we want you to call 708-352-3914. And that's the number to call Catnap.
And catnapfromtheheart.org. I've got that down.
Get the website, visit the website. But let's try to get our cats, the cats that we featured on our show today, let's try to get them adopted and give them good homes. Don, thank you very much for coming on the program. And we'll see you next time on Pet Pals.